Good afternoon and welcome to QuickTake Stock, the show for retail traders eager to get smarter. I'm Ritika Gupta. Gap's certainly not helping the market out today. Last time I checked, plunging in the double digits, something like 18% or so. And a lot of this is down to its Old Navy brand. Now, this was meant to be its kind of star performer and lead the engine of growth, but it seems that it's in trouble. It usually counts for about 50% of its sales. So that's kind of what's putting investors back. Also, the CEO announcing that she will be leaving, that is Nancy Green, and also lowering its quarterly sale guidance.
So triple whammy,
just
right?
triple whammy here for the stock. So that's, I think, what investors are just taken aback by. The consumer does seem to be strong. In fact, consumer spending soaring, in particular from millennial and Gen Z, Tim, and that's really led by travel bouncing back, people spending more. But one thing that investors are looking at, you can see the stock is down, is those higher costs. It has 34% higher costs in the first quarter, so that's why analysts are a little bit more mixed on these results, but it does show at least that the consumer looks robust. Yeah, I think that one was interesting because the subscriber growth looked good, and that's what investors like. That sent the shares up. But at the same time, analysts were looking at it as mixed because of some of the macroeconomic headwinds and the fact that sales missed estimates. So it's a mixed one for that. And Marta, one thing that I'm curious about is, you mentioned the demand picture, but I feel like there's a difference in what we're seeing in different earnings. For instance, Netflix, we saw the subscriber growth numbers falling, consumers perhaps thinking that we can cut back on that as inflation rises. But then you have the likes of Kimberly-Clark with earnings today, and it showed that consumers still willing to spend despite higher prices. And we've seen that with P&G, and we've seen that, we kind of talked about that with Amex as well. So what's going on here in terms of consumer demand? Is the consumer still strong? Yeah, Martin, I thought it was interesting what you said about perhaps the stay-at-home stocks. That's one factor into it. Maybe they're just not as popular right now because people want to go out and they still want to fly, clearly. But one question that I did want to ask is about next week, looking ahead to that. And of course, we have a spate of tech earnings. We had Netflix kind of setting the tone. But what are you expecting going forward in some of those names or sectors? That was Morningstar America's CIO, Marta Norton. Thank you for joining us. We will be right back, of course. You are streaming QuickTake Stock. Climate-related weather events are expected to cost businesses $1.3 trillion by 2026. That's according to the non-profit CDP last month. The SEC proposed a new rule which would require firms to disclose their physical and transition risks related to climate change, as well as their greenhouse gas emissions. The rule is a major step forwards in U.S. climate regulation and will bring it closer to European counterparts. And if companies are placed on this list, do you expect it to have an impact on their operations? What does it mean practically for Texas state agencies who have investments in this? And Controller, when talking about inflation, higher prices, how are you kind of seeing this transcend into businesses and their spending on ESG? Is it that they're facing higher costs, so that makes it more difficult to prioritize that? The oldest ballpark in Major League Baseball is taking a new step to make the game day experience green for the environment. The Boston Red Sox and Fenway Park have partnered with financial firm Aspiration to become the first carbon-neutral team in the MLB. A portion of every Red Sox ticket will be contributed to the Aspiration Planet Protection Fund, which will use carbon credits to offset Fenway emissions. Joining us now is Andre Cherney. He's the CEO and co-founder of Aspiration. First of all, Andre, how did you come about with this idea, and how exactly do you plan to offset the carbon emissions? Is it that you plant trees, or is it soil enhancement? What are the techniques and tools you're using? But how exactly do you measure that data from the fans in terms of the transportation? And it's not just about the transportation when you think about the fans. I guess it's also in the stadium food sales and how much beef is being produced. So there's a lot that goes into this. And how do you all include that when measuring the carbon footprint? And I'm Ritika Gupta. Have a wonderful weekend. Goodbye.